So, welcome everyone. I'm Harshit, founder of Flow Community. And to give you a brief of what Flow Community is, we have been existing since 2015 with the very idea how to make opportunities and resources, accessible for everyone. How to find the right opportunities and the right mentorship or the right, uh, you know, opportunities at the right time. This is what we have been doing, and many people, many success stories we have seen, and this has motivated us to build a bigger platform where we could be able to organize hands-on workshops or sessions by industry mentors or speakers who have been in your shoes and who have been throughout your journey, have successfully navigated that. And we are lucky to have Arvind with this first session in our series called What Can You Teach Me in 40 Minutes? So it's an interesting conversations or a hands-on where we would not just be limited with a, more sort of a dialogue through activities. This is what we intend to do, and have you a glimpse of what is happening in the industry, what kind of tools, technologies are being used, and how it is being, in demand with different competitions, proposals, and all these sort of things. We want this session to motivate you towards, and I'll just introduce a little bit about our platform where, like. We do everything. So our platform is called Flow, where the session is happening, and people or mentors like Arvind, industry professionals or people, where we have a lot of topics on different workshops, be it on parallel programming or summits or fellowships, and different people who have done that, who have participated in it, who have successfully cracked those opportunities, or just to give you a role model, they participate in it, they take their workshops, and we have different mentors who have been very motivating, inspiring, and who have done different career journeys. So, to start with this session, we have Arvind, who has been a AI architect at Nokia, and this session would be what Arvind would be taking to how to develop web apps or apps in VR and AR in the browser. And I think Arvind can tell you more, and this what this session will be about. We also have another session happening on 18th December, which will be more on sort of open source agents for software testing, and like the AI agents which has been coming, and kind of like the more recent topics of developments in AI research happening right now. So this session is happening on 18th December. So we conduct these kind of learning programs and community building where it helps people to get to know other people who are doing different uh, stuff, and who have people who have from beginner to advanced, anybody we believe can teach, anybody can learn. So this is what Flow Community is all about, and I will leave I will like to introduce and bring along Arvind to be able to carry forward this session, introducing himself and the session itself, and we can take it forward. At the end, as we complete it, we will open the session to questions. So please feel free to raise your hands if you have something very substantial. Please, I ask you to keep your things muted because it will not cause us any distractions. And just if you feel like, give us reactions, give some feedback, give a thumbs up through your video. It's all very motivating. And we are having this session not as a monologue but as a dialogue. So please feel free. It's not something where you have to just keep yourself limited. And at the end, we'll take up these questions and try to make it more engaging and more inspiring. So at the last, have fun. Flow Community is all about knowing each other and helping out each other. So over to you, Irwin, to take this forward. And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Sarshad. Let me pin myself and share my screen. Yeah, I. It's really nice to see so many people joining in. So I have started sharing my screen. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I wanted to introduce all of you to this framework or web library that I've been quite hands-on with for the last few years called A-Frame. I find it really easy to use, and I find that a lot of people want to do things with AR, VR, but really get scared with where to start. So that's where all of this started. Uh, and through this next 40 minutes or so, it's I want it to be as interactive as possible. I can't see chat, so I will ask Harshit to just monitor that. And if there's any questions that you guys ask in the chat, then he can chime in and at least let me know so we can address that as soon as possible. But the main thing is I'm going to introduce myself and the system first, and then we'll go hands-on right from the beginning and try to build a 3D web page, have it accessible for free online, where you could share that link with your friends or open it up on your phone or some other devices so you can see how it looks like on various kinds of systems. And then little by little, we'll get more into the technical side and see if we can improve our application. This is all based on how much time we have. And I want to keep it really open as much as possible for ideas, tips, discussions, anything that you'd want to get through. So to really begin, a little introduction about myself. I am an AI architect right now at Nokia. I am not affiliated with the A-Frame library or any of the projects around it professionally at all. It's just something that I truly do enjoy using. It's an open source system. But yeah, I work at Nokia and I build software systems for enterprise networks. So that's IoT, video analytics, computer vision, machine learning, all kinds of different things. Uh, I did my bachelor's in Hong Kong, and it's an excellent city to be in, first off, and a great university. But it also just so happened to coincide with some of the most significant protests they've had in their history, at least in the recent period. So both 2014 and 2019 were massive protests that were happening there, and I happened to be right between both of those. Uh, I have a lot of different kinds of hobbies, from board games, scuba diving. I started learning how to do woodworking and uh, building things like shoe shells and stuff on my own. Electronics hardware like IoT stuff, Arduinos, Raspberry Pis. I have drawers and drawers full of sensors that I like to play around with. Here's a quick project that I just wanted to share, just as something that I built almost 10 years ago with a bunch of my friends at college, where we had robots that could play badminton. The ones on the left are us, the ones on the right were another college in China. But yeah, so these are the kind of things, robotics, sensing, that I have always really been keen on. Started off back then 10 years ago, and now we're still at it. So, first thing, what I want, as many of you who want to follow along with what I'm doing, to either scan this QR code or let me copy this link and paste it in the chat as well so that you have an access to it. Is that right? So, what that will take you to is this webpage. You may not see this at the beginning. Yeah, I see a lot of you starting to open this. And when you get here, under all of these icons is a button called Remix. So if you can somehow figure out how to click it, it will create a version of that page that you can edit. Because I think by default, the one that I've shared, you shouldn't be able to change the code. So when you open it, just click the remix button. I hope it doesn't show up as poorly for all of you, but just see if you can find this white button right under it and click it, because that will create a copy of this where we will start writing our code. Another thing is try to get the preview panel to open. And for that, what you need to do is at the bottom, there's this preview button. So if you just do open preview pane, it will show you what the app looks like. So right off, without giving you any more introduction to what else is happening, this amount of very basic HTML, which uh, I'm going to assume that there might be some of you who have never worked with HTML. but still, like let's say 5 6 lines of HTML, and we have a ball that you can move around. So if you click on it, you can use your mouse to drag around. You can use the arrow keys or WASD if you're a gamer to move around and look at it from different directions. We'll get into what more you can do, but this is where we begin. At this point, are there any questions that anyone's facing? I don't see anything. So I will continue. Okay. So A-Frame is an open source library or a web framework to build 3D web applications. It uses something called WebXR, which is a standard specification that is sort of uh, built into most of our recent browsers, Firefox, Edge, Chrome, on mobile phones as well as desktop computers, as well as tablets and VR headsets, and you name it. So pretty much anything with a modern web browser will have the capabilities to run these kind of 3D applications. So if you were to open the A-Frame website, if you just Google it, I'm sure you'll get here. Uh, they immediately show you a bunch of example 3D applications that you can interact with. So this is just to show you the kind of apps that we can build. It really does not take much effort or very high technical knowledge for you to start building these things. If I was to open this same URL on a mobile phone, it would give me the option to run it in AR, which would mean that, say, this Triceratops, instead of just floating in blank space, will actually look like it is in your room. And likewise, if you open the same URL on a VR headset like a Meta Quest 3 or so, which is also basically running on Android and has a web browser in it. If you open this URL, it'll have a VR button at the bottom. So if you click that, it just swaps out your entire environment with this. That's the absolute basic of it. Uh, and then there's a couple of other things. So let's get directly a little bit more hands-on on the code. So let me walk you through what we have on this index.html at the beginning. Uh, so this is the general structure of a HTML page. You have HTML, a head, and the head is where you typically put all the information that you tell the browser to load before the rest of the web page itself loads. So here we have loaded the A-Frame library. So we've given the link to that. And this thing you can ignore for now. We'll get to it at a later point. It doesn't really do anything at this stage. Then the other part for A-Frame itself is the convention that they have A-Frame specific systems to be labeled as A hyphen something. Sorry, is there a question? How to get that? Did you get to this page where you saw this, clicked remix or something, and then if you click preview, it should just open up here. It's if that's not working, let me know. Just come back. Like if you're able to get it to work, just let me know. But otherwise, I will continue for time. So yeah, this thing A scene, A hyphen anything is the convention for A-frame specific like HTML tags. So an A scene is something that you absolutely need to create in order to uh, uh, construct a 3D application. So anything that you want to show up within the rest of the app has to be inside the A scene. And if you were to go to the documentation of the A-Frame webpage, either you go to the homepage and you click here, or just like aframe.io/docs. Here on the left side, there's a huge number of different things that they have. And if you scroll all the way down, there's this thing called primitives. So they have box, camera, circle, cone, all of these different things, which are pre-built, what they call primitives or templates for objects that you can create in your application. So if I wanted to create an application with a cube and a cylinder and a triangle, it's not a very functional application, but let's say I wanted to do something like that. All I'd need to do is within between the two A scene tags, so between these two lines, I'll just have to create a sphere, or what did I say, a box, a cylinder, triangle, whatever. So for creating a sphere, in this case, what I've done is a hyphen sphere. You can specify the position, you can specify color, and you can specify a lot of other things. So in the case of a sphere, if I just come down to it and I go here, there's a huge number of different properties. So each of these properties configures a different value. And you can imagine that position is going to move it around, color is going to change it. So I've set it to light green, so it looks light green. If I change it to red and then just wait a couple of seconds, Glitch will just update it and now it looks red. So same way, let me just show you what happens if I don't set the position. This is something that you might see. I don't see anything in the application at all. So now what has happened is that the you start the application from the position 000. So if you don't specify a position here, the sphere is also at 000. So if I come here and then just move backwards using the down arrow key or S, I can start seeing that sphere come back. So I want to show you how the position axes, X, Y, and Z axes are set up so that we can figure out how do you come up with these values. So 000, I don't see anything. What I need to explain is that 000 basically means x equals the point x equals 0, the point y equals 0, and the point z equals 0. So if you were to try and visualize a three-dimension sort of chart or something like that, it's a 3D graph with three axes perpendicular to each other. The x is the left and right direction, y is the up and down direction, and Z is inside or outside through your computer screen. So there is a specific terminology that we use for handedness in a coordinate system, which basically just means that in this case, like if you were to hold your right hand in the exact way that the image shows, the z-axis is facing towards you, which means that uh, positive numbers will come closer and closer to the camera, negative numbers will be further and further away from the user. So if I wanted to move this sphere to be a little bit away from the origin point, I would move this to be minus something. And this number 1, 2, or 3 is actually the distance in meters. So if I say it's minus 3, it's going to be 3 meters away from the starting point, and which is why now we can see it. If I was to move it to minus 5, it would be 5 meters away. It would look smaller, but it's further away. Okay, any questions there? As and when you have questions, just put it in chat because I'll keep coming and checking on it. Likewise, I could also show you if I was to move it to x equals 1, it's moved slightly to the right. Let me exaggerate it a little bit. Let me do 4. It's all the way to the right over there. Same way, if I was to do minus 2 or something, it comes a little bit to the left. Right, I will make that 0. And the same way, y equals 1 would move it a little up. Y equals 5, might even move it out. Yeah, it's all the way up there. Right? Now that's position, that's color. And for color, there's another, like you could just type in some common color names like this, and it would pick up, if it's a well-known predefined color like red, blue, green, it would just work. But if you have like a very oddly specific color that you're not able to define with that, you can use something called hex codes, which I think a lot of you will be familiar with. So you like over here, I've done the background to be 344B60. What that means is that it's the first two colors represent how much red, the second two numbers represent how much green, and the last two numbers represent how much blue. These are in something called hexadecimal format. So the smallest value is 0 and the highest value is FF. So 34 is kind of like 25% of the way to the max. 4B is slightly more than that, and then 60 is like maybe 40%, 50%, 40% all the way to the max. So it's kind of like a slightly bluish color because it's the least amount of red and slightly more blue. So same way, if we wanted to create, I don't know, let's say a pinkish color, it might be a lot of red. So D0, a little, a decent amount of green and blue. So I'm just going to do, let's say 90/90. So here we have a peachish color. This, if you're not able to figure out how I did that, just like look up pink RGB, and then I'm sure you'll find one of these websites where they give you the hex codes. If you're using Google, it would actually have a tool right at the default that would allow you to pick a color. But yeah, so that's how you set the color, that's how you set the position. uh, and I hope you guys are also just starting like feeling comfortable with experimenting with those values side by side. uh, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a couple of minutes for you guys to just uh, try to put in a few more shapes. So outside of sphere, we could also use um, a box, a hyphen cylinder, a hyphen cone. I'm not introducing all of these at this point because some of them require you to do different things. Like a GLTF model would require you to have a 3D model. A light is a completely different thing from a shape. So let's stick to some of these basic shapes. But if you want to experiment, go for it. And just try to pull them into your scene. If you have any issues, errors, things that don't make sense, or if I went too fast at any point and you want me to repeat, please just ask those questions. So uh, the meanwhile, what I will do if is also just try tinkering around so you get a sense of how you can adjust all of these properties. So I'm going to create a cylinder. And as soon as I created the cylinder, I did not see it because, like I said before, it is starting at 000. So if I set the position, and maybe I don't like the shape of the cylinder. I want it to be taller rather than so flat. And in that case, what I can do is go to the documentation of the cylinder, and then there are some properties. Obviously, the most, since it's the most common one, it's already given here in the example. I want to change the height, so I want to increase the height and maybe reduce the radius as well. So in that case, let's have a 2 meter tall cylinder with a radius of zero point 0.6 meters. There we go. We have the cylinder right there. So as you can see, as I move around, like it is, you can really get a sense of that 3D-ness of it all. Okay. Now, another thing is I've only spoken about position and color so far. Here's another part to understand. What if this cylinder that I have vertically, I want to rotate it so that it is lying flat and looks more like a horizontal pipe? In that case, what I want to do is I want to uh, rotate it. And the way rotation is represented in A-frame is that it's something called Euler angles, where you represent the orientation of any object in 3D space as a rotation around a combination of X, Y, and Z axes. So if I wanted to make this face me, where the circular part of the top is facing the user. I'd want to rotate it around the x-axis. So the x-axis faces left and right. So if you were to like stick a rod through your shape, an imaginary rod through your shape, and rotate it, that is what a rotation around the x-axis means. So if I was to imagine like a stick going right through this along the x-axis, and then if I was to just twist that, that is the rotation. How much do I want to twist it? That you'd have to specify. So if I want to specify the rotation, I can do, as I said, it's going to be around the x-axis. So I want to rotate it by 90 degrees along the x and nothing on y and z axes. And as soon as I specified, you see that the cylinder is turned flat. So if I wanted to actually have it along a diagonal angle like that, you'd also have to rotate it around the y-axis. And then you have that. I hope this makes sense. I know I used a lot of imprecise words, but look in the size of the figure. There we go. So I've done rotations and position. The other very common thing that you want to play around with is scale. So scale is just the size essentially. So the default scale is also, this is the default. I'm changing the scale for the sphere right now. If I wanted the sphere to be bigger and all like just 2 times larger or 4 times larger, I would just increase the all three of these numbers. And then you have, I've put scale equals 222. So now I have a sphere that's 2 times bigger in all directions. If I only wanted to increase the size in, let's say, the x direction and the z direction, but not in the y direction, which would mean that it's like a flattened ball, I could do something like this, where it's like some weird elliptical kind of shape, but it's like if you took a basketball and just like smashed it from the top. Yeah. So position, rotation, scale. Any of these are very important. At this point, I'm not going to go too much through it, but for a cylinder, as with any geometry, like if you go back to geometry class and think, a cylinder would have a radius and a height that is required to represent the shape of the cylinder. Likewise, a box would only would have the length of the sides, so that would be the width, the depth, and the height. So depending on the shape that you're using, these property names are going to be slightly different, which is why I said that having this documentation page open is quite convenient. Same way for a lot of the other things as well. Okay. Now, what else did I have specified here? Yeah, so this is what I had mentioned. Okay, any other questions? If you want, feel free to unmute yourself and ask as well. Is there anything you want me to do, change the color, or you're trying to do and you're not able to figure it out? Okay, if not, I will continue. Okay, so we have just played around with the simple shapes, and I'm sure most of you are way more creative than me, and you can actually build like nice looking things out of simple shapes, faces, figurines, characters, all of those things. But it's not very useful of an application at this point. So things that you might practically want to do is that when you are building an application, you might want to instead load a 3D model. So like this triceratops, for example, maybe you're making a science project, or like a sort of visualization of these historical creatures and things, and you have a 3D model of it, and you want to show it to the user in a way that they can put it in their location. Now, A-frame itself is not the tool to design this 3D model, but if you either you already know how to do it, or if you have a 3D model, or if you're looking for a free asset that you want to use, you could go to Sketchfab, for example. It's a very popular 3D platform, and then you can just like look through and try to find 3D models that you would like to use in your application. Quite useful to also check this downloadable tag, so that you can try to find the ones that are actually available for you to capture. So let's say I wanted a 3D model of this car, and all I need to do is click this sign in, download, and it would be in a format that is very likely something that the system can load. I don't think they have this specific. I'll have to log in. I'm not doing that right now. But is there a way to change the background to an image? Yeah. Let me get to that. I'll just finish this 3D model thing and then come to that. Yeah. So if you wanted to load a 3D model like that, you can download it uh, to your system. You can upload it over here on Glitch, and if it is in a .glb or .gltf format, you can use this agltf model. And if you see the examples, they show you how to actually import it. And once you actually provide the name of the file and then use this agltf model, it will show up in your thing. And then you can use the same properties, position, rotation, scale, to place it where you want within your application. Same way, if it is a .obj file, you can use this. Uh, uh, we call these primitives, so you can use this primitive to load it. And if you wanted to use some other kind of model format, you can just Google A-frame, that model format. So if it's a PLY file, I'm sure a lot of you don't know, are not in the 3D space. So if it's something like that, you just Google A-frame PLY. Someone has probably already written a loader for it. If not, use some tool to convert it into one of these and use it. Uh, I just wanted to introduce you where you would get those 3D models as well. So, okay, background image. Now, I think that you might be picturing something like this, perhaps, where you can find a image that you want to use as the background, and if you like just look around, it's that image. Like if you move around, it might break the uh, illusion a little bit. But the idea is, if you had some image, maybe of a sky or something like that, you could very well set it as the background. The component you would use for that is the wait, what is it? Hmm, is it a image? I don't think so. A sky. So if you've ever done any HTML, it's like you just load your HTML from the file as here, and then you create the ASCII and you tag, like you provide the, you basically just follow this. So it's like you create an image with an ID, and then you specify which ID selector over here, and it would set that as the background. If you want, I could probably even try it out. Um, Let's go get panoramic sky image. Indians. Oh, I already had a few. So how was that? Let's look at the documentation again. So you have to create a assets. You put the image inside that. Let me get the URL for the image here. Go and find this, copy it, go back, paste it, and then I add a sky. There we go. Now we have that image as the background image. Yeah. Okay. Now I will move on. So these are some, if you plan to experiment more with these 3D web applications, I would really suggest these. Ambient CG is wonderful, like you just saw, for really quickly getting a very high quality uh, uh, like sky or material or things like that. Say if you wanted to make your box look like it is steel, uh, right now it looks really random plasticky. But if you wanted to make it look like steel, you can just come here, search for steel, and it would have materials that look like that. And in a very similar way to how we set up the sky, there is a way where you can make uh, set an image also on these objects. So I highly recommend getting used to or getting an account on some of these websites because it really is quite cool. Uh, Another thing, I am going to just come back here, remove the sky just to really emphasize on the objects. As you can see, it looks very, how to explain it, like very basic. The lighting is like it looks and feels almost 2D. It doesn't feel very realistic. One thing is that the way you set up lights in your scene can completely make or break the realism of it. I am just doing this quickly because I've been writing a lot of A-frame over the years. But one thing I would highly suggest is that when you start uh, like using platforms like this, really learn how to set up lights in your scene in a good way so that the shadows really emphasize the 3D nature of how you have arranged your objects. Because if you don't set up lights and you set it at the default, everything ends up looking very cartoonish. But if you start uh, think like a director where you have real flashlights and camera lights and different kinds of lights around your actors and your uh, the the movie scene itself, it can really change the mood of the scene. So it's the exact same thing that is applicable here as well. So this is just a thing that I would suggest you to look into because it's something that you have to experiment with and learn by yourself, but it's worth getting into. Uh, and then another thing that I want to get into on the technical side is how do we take this and make it interactive? So at this point, we just like I've very basic given a very basic introduction of how to structure the layout of all the objects in your application, but not really how to make them do something. So that's where there is the idea of components and the entirety of A-frame, as well as a lot of other platforms that are allowing users to make 3D applications, Unity, Unreal, a lot of these game engines, they have something, they follow an architectural pattern called the entity component system. So here, all objects within your application are considered entities. And then there are components which are sort of like bundles of functionality that all match a similar use case. And then there are systems that are one step more abstract that manipulate the components themselves. So the example that I wanted to highlight here is that the Earth and the Moon can be entities in a 3D application. The component of you could create a component that manages the gravitational attraction between the Earth and the Moon. So there could be some sort of representation of, depending on how far they are, there will be a force that pulls them together. And same way, you could build a system that manages the physics for all the objects in the scene that have gravity, and make sure that they are all orchestrated in a way that makes sense. So that's the sort of levels that I want you to start thinking about that. Now, very quickly, I also just want to show you the uh, process of creating one of these components. Before that, let me check. Is there? Yeah. Just another 5 minutes. Yeah. So this is the general syntax for creating a component. This is all JavaScript, so a little bit more code. But you create a component in the structure where maybe you want to create a component to rotate an object. So let's call it spin. We have a parameter that might be duration, and the type of duration will be a number in milliseconds. And let's say the default duration will be 2000 milliseconds or 2000 seconds. I say 2 seconds. So any code that you write within init will run once when this component is set up with an object. And update will run every time you change one of these properties, like duration. If you specify more, it'll change on all of those. And tick will run once every time a frame is rendered on the scene. So usually, if your application is running fine, that will be between 30 and 60 times per second. So that'll be very, very frequently. So avoid putting anything compute intensive there. So maybe I want to do something like I want to have this object uh, animated. So I am glazing over uh, the syntax and how I know how to write this code. For that, I really just suggest you to look through the documentation yourself. But so the properties that you specify here can be accessed through the this.data dot, and then I could specify duration. I could specify what am I going to animate, the position or the rotation, the starting value of the rotation, and the final value of the rotation, which let's say 359.9 degrees. And I want it to loop. Okay. So now I've written a component that can be configured to be set on any object. So if I wanted the cylinder to spin, all I need to do is come here and type add spin to the properties. Okay, it's spinning around the y-axis. So let me just make it spin on the x-axis instead. Yeah. So I know I skipped through a lot of it, but I did want to just highlight this as well, because this is how you actually make things do stuff. So you could set it up so that when you click on an object, it plays a sound, or it moves, or it gets a user input in some way, create buttons, do all kinds of things like that. So that's all up to your creativity. But yeah, that's it with my planned things, and this is where I just wanted to keep it completely. Uh, any questions, discussions? Okay. Yeah, Harsh.
Yes. Hi, Arvind. Brilliant session. I have a question, which is very top view on this workshop. Let's say A-Frame is one such tool, but let's say given the generative AI scene is coming up, what frameworks, what tools do you see that would escalate, like this kind of beginner friendly to expert level development, or more, do we see or have more frameworks like A-Frame that makes it more motivating, or enables more community to try these tools and hands-on over there?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So I think the just highlighting the capabilities that generative AI is bringing. There are uh, a bunch of startups and even free tools that are coming out nowadays. Where, let's say, if I wanted to create an application or a game where I have uh, a I don't know. I want to have an object. Maybe it looks uh, like an old retro telephone. Uh, I don't know where to go and start building that. I don't know how to use the 3D modeling tool, but the same way that you would use DALI or Midjourney, now there are these models and systems where you could just type in the kind of 3D model that you want. It will spit it out in a format that you can just put into directly into an application like this. So it makes that process of creating the world that you're visualizing a lot faster. I just don't know the names of those companies, but I'm sure if you were to search image to 3D or text to 3D model, you'll find a bunch of these companies that do it, where you have an idea, you start converting it to 3D, and then you start putting it together in a platform like this, and you're good to go in a way that, or rather, at a pace that was never possible before. Yeah, games and applications, of course. Yeah, so the company that really sponsored A-Frame itself, they used to make this thing. I don't know if it's still up, but they used to make uh, a Minecraft clone for virtual reality called Supercraft. So uh, it's absolutely possible. There's a bunch of different games that just wouldn't work on a computer, but you'd need to open it up in a VR headset. That people do build with this. Uh, I can't share too much of my projects with A-Frame that I've really built, but I have contributed quite heavily to uh, the open source part of is where I've had built my own A-Frame components and shared those for the community to use. So I've created this sort of maps based system where you can import this into an A-frame application, and in VR you can walk around, sort of like flying around the entire earth, and when you look down you can see uh, actual real satellite maps of the location. So you could fly around, it's kind of like a Google Earth kind of thing. So if you start going down towards the ground, the map starts zooming in, and you start flying up, the map starts zooming out. It's fairly simple in that sense, but it's quite cool when you actually put on a VR headset and try it out. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's probably a few more, but those are even more technical where it would be really hard to explain. So, I mean, although I've shown you apps like this is just to completely just get your curiosity a little bit up. But the possibilities with this are truly kind of endless. There's a lot that can be done. I don't know if how familiar everyone is. I need to mute this, but there's something going on here, some kind of game, but I've never tried this out. But okay, anyway, uh, you can create painting applications. Someone's created a fitness application, and all of these are all just the samples. So these aren't even the real, you know, apps that are out there that people are using. So you can imagine. So just the beginning. Go ahead, Asha.
Hi, Arvind. I think that was one of the very immersive sessions I've been recently, like you know, participated. Uh, I think, Arvind, if you have any questions for the audience yourself, feel free to
Mhm.
ask them or write them in the comment, or if you have any polls to run. Uh,
Mhm.
like you know, from my side, though, it was quite from the beginner friendly, being able to understand the resources, the top view of all these things. But definitely there are too many questions that I would love to ask you upon, and I think you shared the your contact and details where people can
Yeah,
reach out to
definitely.
you. So amazing, to have you, Arvind. Thank you for your time and preparations to do these workshops. And it was a pleasure to hear you. And for everyone who joined a little later, I'm Harshit, founder of Flow, where we conduct a series called what can you teach me in 40 minutes, and people who are experts like Arvind and in different domain at different stage help us to find those resources, communities, and through these workshops. So thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to write down in the comment or reach out to us later. And here's the link which I've shared with you in the chat, where if you have any suggestions for yourself to do the workshop in groups or alone, please feel free. We have the entire community to participate, and it will be interesting to know you through those workshops. So thanks everyone. I think it was an amazing session. Feel free to contact Arvind or us, and we'll be able to do something more. Thank you everyone who participated, and with that, we really am looking forward to more such opportunities.
Thanks, everyone. Nice. Does the recording stop automatically?
No, we have to, I think, press stop sharing.
Oh,
Okay, me and you are.
wait, did